Today, I'm sitting down with Zach Petersen of Mazette Wines out of the San Ynez Valley. So Zach grew up as a surf rat in Dana Point, and he's had quite the interesting arc of career so far, from building surfboards to brewing craft beer, and then somewhere along the way ended up in the vineyards of Santa Barbara County, farming by day, making wine as well. But he's got some serious chops in terms of his training with Domaine de la Côte, Alain Graillot, some other winemakers in Australia somewhere along the way. But I think what makes Mazette and what Zach's doing really distinct is what he's doing in the vineyards and on the ground. So we'll learn about this, but it's rehabilitating a lot of tiny vineyards and farming what I consider to be the right way, and the results are really compelling. And the wines are they're like precise yet fresh, a little bit wild, but it's definitely, it has your signature on them. So
that's good to know.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah,
and
thanks for
welcome.
having me.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into your story a little bit. So as I mentioned, you grew up in Dana Point, did some surfing, did some brewing. Tell us about that whole arc and how you ended up in Santa Barbara County.
Just creative pursuits as a kid, right?
Yeah.
So growing up surfing, skateboarding even prior, like very typical Dana Point kid lifestyle. But everything that I did, whether it was build bike riding, skateboarding, surfing, I always built things that I like to do. So building bikes, building skateboards, and then eventually as I was older, and I was 14, so I don't know if that's technically old enough to have a job, but that's when I started working in the surfboard, not like a surf shop, but the manufacturing shop, and then working in the back in the glass shop. So yeah, just kind of always been building things. When I was 18, I kept shaping surfboards here in Los Angeles, and ended up going to school out here, and that kind of petered out. Picked up restaurant work, and that led me to beer, I guess.
So the restaurant work, it was just out of necessity? You just started doing?
No, out of passion too. My mom was awesome. She taught me a lot, cooking, how to cook. So even as a kid, I was cooking meals for the family. And then in high school, I did in the summer at the culinary school down in Laguna Beach, some of my classes there to learn more. So I wanted to be a chef at one point too. So I worked in a couple restaurants in Dana Point in the summers, after, in between college semesters in the kitchens, and then got a job at Ply Provisions here in Los Angeles. But there I found my home front of house / mainly expo. So
really?
Kind of realized kitchens were fun, but
it's a grind.
It's a grind. Yeah.
Okay, and then from there, brewing.
Yeah,
so
just
what?
More things of making something that people enjoy, beer, and I want to make it, learn it super in depth, and be able to create the things that I enjoy. At that time, it was beer. So I thought that would be a very fun career path, and also coming from a culinary background, fermenting everything, hot sauces, tapache in the kitchen, beer was kind of it made sense to me.
But was it garage project to start, and then you did professional, or you just got a job in breweries, or?
Yeah, pretty much the both. I think all brewers at some point did a homebrew stint, but that was, that's a hobby.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, my first job was at 20 years old in Mexico as a brewing apprentice.
Really?
So just
who were you
trying to get after it early.
What brewery were you at?
Baja Brewing Company, based out of San Jose del Cabo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
It was very fun. I learned a lot, actually, of course.
Yeah.
But it was an apprenticeship at the end of the day. But yeah, I was 6 months down there.
Nice. It's a beautiful part of, so close and so different,
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, and then somehow transition to wine. I mean, was it a visit to wine country? Was it more just you tasting wine and getting more into it from a perceptive standpoint, or what?
A bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept going down the brewing career pathway, working at like three more breweries.
Okay.
And in those breweries, we did some sour projects, some like wild ferments. Started like cultivating wild yeast off of the trees, and I was up in Mammoth Lakes and kind of trying to isolate native yeast strains that way. That was super intriguing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was working at Revision Brewing Company in Sparks. There was another whole, kind of barrel aged program there.
Okay.
And so I was always a proponent of, the natural, yeast, wild yeast, and then like, where are we getting our barley from? Like, why are we getting it from Germany? That's a whole ocean away.
Mm-hmm.
What about the organic farmers that are doing it here? Or can we get more connected to the hop farmers versus like buying it through like YCH hops? Kind of like always pushing that kind of like, well, how can I get closer to the ingredients that we're working with?
How'd that go over with who you were working for?
They were encouraging,
yeah.
but ultimately they're like, no. And that's the brewing industry.
Yeah.
No shade thrown, but
Sure.
like, it's a production. Once you nail it, you've got it. You repeat it every day.
Yeah.
As you grow, you can just keep brewing more, ordering your supplies every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I did some school for brewing as well, and in that school they teach you the winemaking process, and you have to kind of like learn, sake, wine, spirits, beer all together as like an intro. So it was easy, or well, not easy, but it was a really nice way to learn about wine, and it was just kind of a natural, gravitation towards, wow, people are growing their own ingredients and making their product from those ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get involved with agriculture.
I see.
And that's kind of what the push came from.
Okay. And then what brought you to San Ynez Valley? Was it like, did you visit and just get hooked on that place, or was it a relationship, or?
It was, there was one pivotal visit. I was still working as a brewer, and I went there and did this whole wine tasting thing for my sister's birthday.
Oh, nice.
And talked to the winemakers and everything, and I was asking all of the questions of like, and I didn't know what I was asking, but I was like, well, how are you, conducting your ferments? Like, where's the yeast coming from? Are you propagating? And they're like, no, it's wild. And yeah, and they were just kind of, a couple winemakers were like, sounds like you know a lot about fermentation. If you're interested in this, just come do it.
Yeah.
Like, there's opportunity. There's harvest internships. I didn't know what that was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I chose Santa Barbara because, one, I'm in love with Pinot and Chard, and I do really believe that some of the best Pinot and Chardonnays coming out of the U.S. are from Santa Barbara.
Yep.
But also, growing up as a surfer, I was very familiar with Santa Barbara and loved it. So.
Okay. Easy choice.
Yeah, it was an easy choice.
All right. Tell me about your time at like Domaine de la Côte. Yeah. Was that early on, or?
Yeah, that was my first wine.
That was your
job.
first one?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're working with
super lucky.
with Sashi right away.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah. I moved to Santa Barbara, and still, looking back, like, really didn't know what was going on. I was like, everybody grows their own grapes, right? That's how we make wine. So I moved there. I found a half-acre vineyard to farm. I was like, okay, I will just learn by doing.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a job yet. Kat and Max, the winemakers at the time at Roblar, if you've had those wines, they kind of met me, and they're like, we don't have a job for you, but come in and we'll meet you and see if we can help out. And that was very fortuitous. They hooked me up with Claire, who was the head winemaker at the time at Domaine de la Côte.
Okay.
And just, there was stars aligned. There was an apprenticeship position available that they were just kind of starting out, and they went for me, and I got very lucky because I learned a lot from a really great winemaker.
That's cool. That's cool. But then travels after that, Australia, and then eventually to Domaine Grail, Alain Grail.
Yeah, that's Australia first, and then Grail. Australia came just because I wanted to go somewhere, and that was right after the apprenticeship ended.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, well, Australia, I found this
Opposite
crazy
seasons
job,
and,
absolutely crazy job. cowboy winemaking operation, 15 acres in the middle of nowhere, no machines or anything. Everything was done with buckets, like harvest into buckets, destem with this essentially tiny little destemmer. When they're done fermenting, you bucket into the press. Out of the press, you bucket into the tank. Like, it was fully manual, and we did 90 tons that way.
Wow.
It was and it was in the middle of nowhere. No running water, just a pump from the river. No drains. It was crazy.
Okay.
Wine was good though, so I learned that you could do a lot with a little.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then Graillot, which is one of my favorite Syrah producers, is probably my favorite Syrah producer. So another fortuitous, opportunity there.
So these were all just pretty quick connections, but it definitely got you steeped in winemaking pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. All right. So we, I think, we discovered this. This is the Blanc de Blanc Central Coast Sparkling. I guess you're telling me 2 years ago? It doesn't seem like we've had it that long, but
24. So I guess
24. Yeah,
out in the
2
market
years,
a year
maybe
ago.
A year ago. Okay. Well, I really loved it, first taste, and so we jumped on it right away. But I guess I'm understanding we may not see much more of this. So
it's to be determined. It's
determined.
very fun wine, and now that I've revisited it just recently, and I guess we're going to check it out again.
All right.
I mean, it was very fun wine to make.
We're pouring it tonight for everybody who shows up for the tasting, so we'll at least get some people hooked on it. Tell us about it. This is 100% Chardonnay from Edna Valley?
From the Edna Valley.
Okay.
Yeah, so we grow primarily Grenache Syrah, Sauvignon Blanc, and make wines from grapes that we grow. This is baked in the ethos of Mazette is kind of wine for the people, and accessibility, and trying to make great, conscious wines, or sustainable wines, if you will. So sparkling wine, love it. Can't afford most of it.
Right.
So this was kind of like pulling from my experience just with the fruit in Central Coast, and then also a little bit of my brewing background, like having a really good grasp on, movement of wine through tanks and carbonation and bottling techniques.
Okay.
So this is, what is it, $32 on the shelf sparkling wine, sustainable and organically grown. Well, one vineyard's organic, the other's sustainable Chardonnay. It's barrel fermented, aged surly, a lot of batonnage. So we're trying to build texture the whole time and get to this end mouthfeel and this kind of what we expect from Blanc de Blanc, flinty reduction and brioche characters. And then we take all the lees to a pressure tank, what they do with Prosecco.
Prosecco, yeah.
And do a no forced carbonation, but another secondary carbonation, so naturally carbonated in the tank.
Wait, explain that. So, if it's not forced carbonation, what are we doing?
Charmat is traditionally, in the southern hemisphere, they do consider Charmat to be forced carb, but in Italy and other places where in the old world where they employ Charmat, it's actually just a normal champagne starter, right? So there's that you have your base wine that's still done fermenting, and then you create that pied de cuve with some base wine, some water, some sugar sometimes, and start building up that secondary fermentation.
Just in a big closed vessel.
Yeah, well, this one is actually, so it's a smaller pied de cuve where you are getting the yeast all happy and ready to go, and then you add it to your vessel.
Yeah.
And then it kind of goes.
I see.
And then method champenois, you would be doing that to your vessel, but then instead of closing your vessel off, right, obviously it's bottled, and then the fermentation takes place in bottles. So for us, we do this secondary fermentation with a pied de cuve, and do it in tank. And this tank already has all the original lees in it, and we have we're adding as much Chardonnay lees as we've like collected or from the wines into this tank, so we get this like super leesy and so naturally carbonated. If that's what I would say as a brewer, because it's the carbonation is coming from a fermentation versus like just hooking up a CO2. Yeah,
I see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because I mean, when I tasted it before, when I'm tasting it now, I mean, it's got these serious chops. I mean, it feels very much like French. I mean, Blanc de Blanc, like proper.
Yeah,
with all those textures and flavors and things, and then at the price, I was just like, this is a no-brainer. So that helps frame it and understand it a little bit. But yeah, I mean,
there's a creative go at it.
I'm going to encourage you to restart this.
I want to. It's a fun, fun process, and I mean, all that is coming from just the amount of lees that we're like bringing along as we rack the barrels and the early batonnage, and then with this kind of fermentation in tank, and now we have like double lees essentially from the secondary fermentation and the primary in there, and then in a tank we can mix it. So there's just this like constant kind of like that italysis batonnage type thing going on.
So for the uninitiated, lees and batonnage, can you just explain those terms quickly?
So lees being primarily the like dead yeast cells that fall out from primary fermentation, or in the case of method champenois or secondary fermentation, all the yeast and bacteria celels that flock out, or I guess fall down, a better word than flock, but and
batonnage is essentially just like stirring of all that stuff.
Yeah, mixing it all up, and that kind of like helps translate that texture from the lees into the wine. Yeah,
which we could go into a much more complicated conversation about exactly how that happens, but we won't. Well, cool. That's I think it's really compelling, and as you intended, great value. And
aging quite nicely too, which makes me happy.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. Okay, let's get into farming a little bit. So it seems you found this niche, or like found your way into finding some small plots, these little pocket vineyards, and basically sort of resurrecting them, if you will. What are we talking about? Half acre here, 3 acres there?
Small, half acre, under. Some of them are 0.19, I think, is the smallest one. So.
Wow, all right. So tell me, like, why, especially at that scale, when, certainly larger size would reward financially, with just being able to produce more. And not have to dart from vineyard to vineyard during the day and all that.
Yeah, the miles of my car are making me question some things.
Okay.
But I mean, the why is because I wanted to farm early on, right? Just because I thought that was the best way to do things. That's what I wanted to learn. That's where it all starts, and still to this day, that's what I believe. But acquiring land in California, as at that time I started, was 26, 25, don't have working capital.
Sure.
So the small plots was kind of like out of necessity in a way.
So you're actually acquiring the land, or are you just getting lease agreements, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's bartering.
Okay.
The first vineyard was a guy, and I still farm this vineyard. Just had I think it was less than a quarter acre plot of vines, and didn't know what to do with them. And we connected somehow, and he was like, "You can farm it in exchange for the fruit," and I was like, "Deal." So that's how it all started. Is kind of just finding people that had vines in their yards, because we're in wine country too. So many people move there with the dream of having a vineyard on their house property. So that's kind of the vineyards I started with.
So I'm picturing these quite unkempt, untamed, maybe not even treated over several years. Is that the typical thing you're finding?
That's what I started with.
Okay, all right.
And there's a few that maybe the house was sold, and the new person didn't have somebody to take care of it, didn't know what to do with it, and then it's like, what do? Rip it out or let it go wild? Or I come in and I'm like, I'll make it pretty again, and we'll farm it, and you'll have a pretty vineyard. And
so if you can briefly talk through that process, because again, I mean, we're probably talking about like just vine shoots everywhere and weeds everywhere, and who knows what's going on in terms of other plant species and whatever kind of.
Each one is so different. But for the most part, it's pruning them back as step one. And if they haven't been pruned for years, maybe that's a 2-year turnaround time to get like them back with the right vine architecture. But I am interested in organic farming, regenerative farming, and so this rehabilitation of vineyards to me seems like inherently regenerative, instead of like tilling up fresh ground and planting vines, because you can find, fresh virgin ground that people are happy to, let you. Well, even like let you do whatever you want on it in Santa Barbara, but that doesn't feel as, it doesn't feel right to me when you have all these vineyards that are existing, but without care. You can kind of guide those back to, one, being in production, but two, they're already haven't been tilled for a while. You have sometimes native grasses coming back, or different species of wildflowers, and you can kind of like help nurture those back into what Santa Barbara hills look like, which is nice. I've found that if you take over a vineyard that has been recently farmed, you'll have all these noxious weeds, if you will or believe in noxious weeds, but you'll have your ox tongue and mustard everywhere. But the ones that kind of have been left alone, they're full of like native grasses and whatnot. So you kind of have to like guide it back into being a vineyard ecosystem instead of everything going crazy.
So let's talk about that again, because like for somebody who may not be familiar, when we're talking about regenerative farming, like some of the real core principles are no-till and just trying to have a diverse biosystem, if you will, in place, right? Preferably, as you mentioned, with more native grasses, native flowers, and that kind of thing. But why? I mean, I think there's a couple major reasons, but I'll let you talk to that. Well, like, why would that matter, and why would it be preferred? I mean,
I think it's the why lies in your values, your connection to nature, and an extractive system or a maybe more circular system, and that's kind of where the regenerative farming comes in. Is we're looking for a system that works together versus farming for a certain product and using the land. There's so many pillars of regenerative farming. The definition is not agreed on.
Sure.
But for me, like what guides me is soil health. If your land is healthy, your soil is alive, that's what for me is regenerative, a living soil. Because there's all these other pillars like sheep in the vineyard, or grazing, and no-till farming like you mentioned. But some of those I think are goals of mine for sure. But I don't think that I personally don't have sheep in the vineyard because I want them, but I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
But I don't think that takes away from the regenerative farming is for soil health. And so if you are farming in a way that is regenerating life beneath the soil and life above the soil, of course, too, that's regenerative farming.
Yeah, but there's side benefits, right? Even for viticulture. I mean, with that soil health, we're talking about a really high density of microorganisms in the soil, and what we're looking for is this sort of natural balance, right?
Yeah.
So that disease pressures are just sort of naturally suppressed rather than having to rely on any kind of treatment, whether it be organic or inorganic. Right?
Yeah, so pollinator habitats in the vineyard, so native species and wildflowers, and having kind of homes for insects and even like weasels even that help with your gophers, and beneficial insects, predatory insects to eat the bad insects, and all that kind of comes from this vineyard that looks a little bit more natural.
Yeah.
Versus cultivated and no home for anybody.
Sure.
So yeah, it's that balance, and then something that I'm most focused on. I mean, I mentioned living soil so much because that is what I care the most about. Because we fertilize vineyards, even use organic fertilizers, but if you can develop this system and have those high density of microorganisms in the soil kind of helping do that work for you, that's where we can kind of look to hopefully achieve some sort of more like homeostasis between.
Just sort of start backing off of treatments in general.
Yeah. And so adding compost is great for that, but there's this, I'm gonna get a little scientific, there's the rhizosphere, right? So this is like the area around the root tips. It's been shown that there is tons of bacteria and little organisms there, right? And they have this symbiotic relationship with the vine, where the vine can kind of tell them, hey, I need some calcium. I can't really get it, but the bacteria can, and they can kind of like exchange, different resources. Like bacteria is like, here's your calcium, can I get a little bit of sugar to like help keep feeding? And there's this kind of exchange. So when you have a really populated soil, then you have more of that exchange going on, and then we don't need to add calcium. And so with that exchange and then more roots growing, you can kind of outcompete all these other things that our vineyards face, like nematodes or phylloxera or just poor soil conditions.
Yeah, it sounds a little out there, and there's a lot of science behind it, but this whole idea of vines being able to communicate with the soil and vines being able to communicate with other vines sounds crazy, but it's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
And there's in a recent, I could say recent, but yeah, I mean recent years, it's been like proven scientifically too, which is great because now you can maybe not sound so crazy.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're doing something real.
Yeah, but going back to the benefits to the viticulture too, there's something to be said about healthy soils, healthy vines, healthy grapes, better wines.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I'm just a believer that it all starts with the farming. Like I want grapes that are farmed, with organic practices, or just grapes that are farmed with care are going to make a better wine. And it says on the back of my labels, like I believe that the more hands-on you are and the more like in tune with the natural processes you are, it translates this energy into the wines. So organic regenerative viticulture is the obvious place to start, but even the fact that we're touching the vines like every day and very in tune with what happens on a day-to-day basis, when we see the grapes in the cellar, it's not our first time, and we kind of like know what to do. We know what they've experienced. Our winemaking is extremely hands-on, and all that kind of, I think, translates a certain little energy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Living wines, that's what we're after.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I mean, there's no question in my mind that good farming practices translate into this energetic wines that you just cannot replicate otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I think we're gonna. How about we transition Sauvignon Blanc?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Sauvignon Blanc because
that's the best wine to, I think, translate some of these ideas for sure.
So this we are happily pouring at the bar at the moment. This is the Mutual Muse, Santa Ynez Valley. So tell us about where this is coming from, how you acquired the vineyards, what's going on with winemaking, as much as you care to share.
So this is Sauvignon Blanc, that first vineyard that I mentioned, that half acre or quarter acre. Actually, no, I can't remember what it was. The first vineyard I started farming was planted to Sauvignon Blanc, and I wasn't really a fan of Sauvignon Blanc as a wine.
Okay.
A few years ago,
handful of years
ago. Yeah, very much so. I thought it was a little simple, and I know I was very familiar with the New World examples that tend to be like grassy and even the God forbid cat pee aroma. But I was working at Domaine de la Côte at the time. Sashi does an amazing job at sharing wines of the world and educating his people about producers. So I was able to have a lot of really excellent Sauvignon Blanc working there, and that kind of started changing my mind of like, wow, this wine really, like, there's some insanely mineral examples of Sauvignon Blanc.
Sure.
And kind of started changing my mind, and then that vineyard made the wine the first year, and it tasted like New Zealand, and I was like, oh god damn it, like this is Sauvignon Blanc's not for me. Maybe we'll graft it. But then, you know, continuing to have those conversations with other producers, tasting more wines, kind of seeing that, you know, you have to treat it special, like, you know, high-end Chardonnay and barrel fermentation, and the picking decisions are different with Sauvignon Blanc than a lot of other white grapes. So it took 2 more years of making Sauvignon Blanc to kind of find this groove with it and find like, okay, I like it when it's farmed like this at this ripeness level, and if you barrel ferment it, then you can get this nice complexity on the palate. If you're farming it no-till, that kind of mineral exchange happens more, and you get more minerality. And if you don't like pyrazines and mercaptans, that greenness, if you can expose the clusters to the sun, and that kind of helps break down those green flavors. So all these little farming things and little decisions, I've found that I can make a Sauvignon Blanc that I'm very proud of.
Okay, so you feel like this is now hitting the mark in terms of where you're going on. Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, it's not usually a wine that I reach for to bring home with me, but this is quite compelling. Might be one of the first Sauvignon Blancs on our wine list. So yeah,
I'm honored.
You got that, yeah, for whatever that's worth. I mean, there's still that very classic Sauvignon Blanc aroma, you know, these kind of grapefruit tones, and yeah, I mean, it's got a grassy, or like hint of grassiness for sure. But
2025 is, I mean, the 24, that's not there at all.
Okay.
I don't expect it to be there in 26. 2025 was a kind of an interesting vintage for us.
All right.
We experienced what the French experience, or it was like cold during harvest. We had 2 rainstorms in the middle of September. So we had a very cool vintage, in my opinion. You know, some people might say it's warm because the rest of the year was warm, but like right when all that like phenological ripeness is happening, it was cold. And that final stage of phenological ripeness for Sauvignon Blanc is incredibly important. And that's where we want heat and sun and kind of those suntan clusters. And we didn't get that in 2025.
So because you didn't get that exposure on the actual grape clusters, like
yeah,
you
I
were
mean,
talking
they got their suntan during the rest of the year, but it was like that last kind of push, that push away from greenness happens like kind of at that last couple strides towards the finish line. All those other things help it get there, but it's a picking decision and your location of your vineyards that's really important. And in 2025, some vineyards just like fully shut down. Like they're like, we're done, you know, and we had to sometimes pick before the rains came, you know, like how the French do. So we have this kind of like Goldilocks zone between like New World Sauvignon Blanc and like, I think like this wine opens up. I mean, it's a very different wine in a couple hours, but let alone day 2 or day 3. But yeah, that kind of that like very it's Loire-esque kind of. You still have that like, you know, it's nothing transcendent, but you still have that like Sauvignon Blanc character going on. But yeah, I mean, 2025 cool vintage.
There's still like this mineral backbone to it that is unusual for California Sauvignon Blanc. So, and you talked about phenolic ripeness. So can you just maybe try to describe like phenolic ripeness versus just pure, you know, sugar levels in the actual, you know, in the grapes, and what the differences between those two are? Yeah,
the phenolic ripeness is like that physical ripeness, like the browning of the seeds and the lignification, you know, where it goes, the stems and the canes go from green to brown like a steak, right? It's like the physical characteristics of the wine, and then I guess in a way, to me, it's also like the maturity of the flavors, you know, like where the flavors are sitting at. And then with Sauvignon Blanc, that doesn't always translate to like the bricks, so the sugar accumulation. So there's many wines that can get ripe with sugar, and then their phenological ripeness, their flavor, the seed, the state of the seed, whether it's green and soft or, you know, brown and hard, kind of it's a moving target.
Yeah.
So for a lot of our wines, we do, you know, we do lab work and whatnot. We're very concerned about the acidity levels and all that. But with Sauvignon Blanc, it is all about phenological ripeness. I don't really care about what the brix is. It's all about the flavor.
Really? Okay. You know, there's a lot made about vine age and a lot of talking about that, and I believe you've just acquired like this, you know, what is it, 6-year-old Sauv Blanc vineyards at Viña Santa Ynez?
Yeah.
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 But that was a Brander vineyard, is that right? Or
yeah. So it was the last person farming it was Mike Brown of Calira Vineyards.
Okay.
Which, if you've watched the 2004 movie Sideways, that's where Sandra Oh works.
Okay.
Like, and they'll pull up and
Calira,
like, you'll see the vineyard planted as it is today.
Oh, really? Okay.
But that vineyard was the very first commercial planting of wine grapes in Santa Ynez in, I think, around 1968.
Okay.
That was all unrooted. It died because of phylloxera and has been replanted since then.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure when it was replanted,
Okay.
but it's not too old. It's between 15, 20 years old right now.
But you've acquired that or sourced
Leasing
from it?
it.
You're leasing it.
Yeah, so we're doing 100% of the farming.
Got it.
And yeah, the Brander connection that was originally the Santa Ynez winery, which is the first commercial winery in Santa Ynez. And Fred Brander was, I think, one of the first winemakers there. So a lot of people have passed through that area, or that winery, rather.
Interesting. Okay, so in addition to Sauvignon Blanc, we have Grenache Syrah in the mix as well.
Yeah.
You know, your Rhone experience probably informed some of those decisions. But how do you translate what you learned with Graillot into what you're doing here in Santa Barbara County, and why Grenache Syrah? Was it just really translating that experience, or is it something that appeals to you just about those grapes?
Yeah, I would say it's more about the varietals. I mean, Grenache was like kind of when I was going back to the in school learning about wine. Grenache was like one of those wines where I was like, wow, like this is. I can't remember the bottle, but I do remember having a really amazing experience with that, and that kind of stuck. Grenache is also really fun to grow, and it grows amazing where I live. So that was kind of like the impetus, like, wow, let's just keep going down this path. But also loving Rhone wines. And then Syrah, I mean, it's, I think, the coolest wine out there. It's the only grape that doesn't taste like grapes. Sometimes it can taste like olives and salami. It's just the most food-forward wine, so it's just so compelling to me. You
and a lot of other winemakers, I wish it would translate into actual sales. But
we all talk about that frequently. Like, we all want to make Syrah, but then like you make it, and then people are like, you know, it's only for like a fancy meal.
Well, stay with it.
Yeah, I plan to.
All right. Well, this is really beautiful. But you mentioned also that you felt like, Santa Rita Hills making some of the best Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in California, maybe in the world, ergo. I mean, is that something you have aspirations to get into, or where's your head at with that?
No, I'm very fortunate. I farm with a farming company as well. As I'm an employee there, and I get to farm Pinot and Chard for some of these places, and it's amazing. But I want to be farming, all the fruit that I make wine from, or as much currently as I make wine from.
Okay.
And I wouldn't wish farming Pinot and Chard on anybody. You are spraying like every week. It's a very difficult varietals to grow. So I like my chiller lifestyle. I mean, I don't think you can even call it chill, but it's a little bit more like we're in tune with the vines and we're not, battling mildew all the time. So that was a complicated answer to no, I'm not going to farm Pinot and Chard. So I'm not going to make it.
Fair enough.
I will happily drink it.
And we'll happily drink Rhone varietals in the meantime. And you also make a vermouth. Tell us about this. What's going on here, other than that it's delicious?
Yeah, total passion project. Really like thanking my lucky stars that people like it because I'm a big vermouth drinker. Amaro at home, little vermouth with sparkling water is a nice beverage versus beer or wine if you're trying to keep it easy.
Yeah.
And just before or after meal always has appealed to me. So I wanted to make a vermouth, and this was just like kind of a total side project. It's inspired by like the hyper locality of where we are. We're in such like an agricultural forward area. So this is just all local botanicals from around the vineyards, from friends' farms, everything in there you can get at like the farmers market in Santa Barbara. So not a super traditional vermouth, but it was just like, how can we get all the farms and get all the flavors of Santa Barbara together in a vermouth, and that's what this is.
And what's the base wine?
Grenache.
Grenache. Is it a secret recipe, or can you divulge some of the botanicals or all?
No, no secrets. Actually, I think I list all the botanicals on there and the farmers, but there's Ojai Pixies, which is like one of the only things coming from outside of Santa Barbara County. That's from this legendary farmer named BD of Earth Trine Farms in Ojai. Ojai Pixies are in there because to me that's like a quintessential Santa Barbara snack. Like they're everywhere, all over the Central Coast. When they ripen, they're always in the car, in the pack, going out to work. And then we have stone fruit from just down the road from where one of my vineyards is. Chamomile, yarrow, stinging nettles, dandelions and dandelion greens, Hoja Santa, which is a really cool plant. Huge leaves, has a very sassafrasy character, which does really come across in this.
For sure.
I might be leaving one or two out, but there's like 11, 13-ish. But
it's really delicious, and like you say, for a weekday spritz, that's a great option. Okay, well, very nice. So you're not terribly old. You've already had quite an adventure, and your wines have already found their way onto some pretty stellar wine lists, at least in LA. With Anna Jacques and Found Oyster, etc. Stanley's Wet Goods.
Yes, of course, don't forget.
That in there. How is that feeling? Does that recognition change anything about your approach or what your aspirations are? Or are you just going to keep it steady?
It was very bashful and humbled by some of the places that I've been able to meet and show and share the wines at. I mean, it's been like, it's been a dream to like make something and then have such an amazing response. Just keep farming well. And like that's like all I care about right now is like continuing to kind of push forward in that regard, and hopefully the wines follow, and hopefully people still take to them and enjoy them. But I think it's just like, I mean, I guess it goes back to this other thing. It's like, I don't know, most people don't know what they're doing. Most people don't know like what the right answer is, like whole cluster, one vintage versus not destemmed fruit, right? So there's all these ideas that we have in the wine world. I have this idea about farming and making Sauvignon Blanc that's barrel fermented, and so I'm just gonna stick to that. And time will tell if like we're on the right path or not. But
so I'm hearing steady as she goes, but is there something like what's next for you? Just really keep it going, or you can't control your impulse to the next adventure?
No, steady as she goes. I want to stick with, because wine has really helped me in life, because it's a long process. And I definitely have ADHD, and I always am like, hobby this and then ditch that hobby and go on to the next thing. I bought a sailboat last year on a whim. I don't know why. So wine has taught me to stick with something, you know, and like these ideas that you have, just kind of, you know, the decisions that we're making in the vineyards, we're not going to really see like results for quite a long time. 2 years, 5 years probably at the minimum. So just kind of stick with it.
That's a really interesting point, because people romanticize you know, wine and winemaking and being a part of all that, but I mean the time frame is so interesting. It's long. It's long.
Like it's a Sauv Blanc. I don't know if this barrel fermented malo goes through malo, Batonage, like if that kind of peters off in 10 years, then I wasn't right. But if it's still bright and, you know, balanced in 10 years, then you know that you made a good decision 10 years ago.
Right.
So, but if I switch it up all the time, then
you'll never know.
Lost it. And then you'll never know. So kind of just steady as she goes. If that's a boring answer, but that's the plan.
You're sticking to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming by. It's been great chatting, so and thanks for coming in. And for those in the neighborhood tonight, you're going to get treated to at least 3 of Zach's wines, and hopefully 4. We got another one supposedly coming. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.
All right.